Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's Evolve Live webinar. Really pleased to be looking forward to sharing the next hour with you and hopefully providing some really great insights around the practical applications of changing the way you manage money, moving to managed accounts, and hopefully a very interactive session as we look for feedback along the way through questions. But before we kick off, I'd just like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land. I'm in Gadigal country as we speak, in Bundi, which is Bondi, obviously we pay respects and gratitude to our elders past, present and emerging. And just by way of introduction, for those that you are not familiar with Elixir and myself, my name's Graham Burnard. I'm one of the consultants with Elixir, and as you can see, here's the team around the country. And we are specialists in working with advice businesses of all shapes and sizes around the country. So we get to see a lot of what's working and get insights as to the latest trends. And clearly managed accounts is one of the big things that we're seeing with a lot of the firms we're working with as they look to embrace that and get the most out of that. So I'll just stop sharing. Oh, I wasn't sharing anyway. Okay. Just hang on one sec. Okay, so today I'm really pleased to be joined by two people who think I've got a tremendous amount to add as we talk about managed accounts and how to practically implement those in your business as you're embracing those. So got Paul Carrington from Investsense and Mike Klupacs from BT Platform. So we'll get sort of both sides, from the funds management perspective of working out about the implementation from a portfolio side, and then also the practical applications from a platform perspective. So welcome, gentlemen. Maybe Paul, if you want to just give a brief introduction of Investsense and your role.
Yep. Look, hi everyone. So I've been in the business for about 36 years. I spent 18 years as a financial advisor. All of that time actually in WA, in Perth. And then I guess I moved to the dark side and got into the funds management distribution side, which is where I am now. I'm a director and one of the four owners of Investsense. Our business exists purely and simply to deliver managed accounts and specifically SMAs and a few IMAs to advisors for them to then recommend to their clients. So our reason for being is really clear, and that is just the delivery of managed accounts. That's entirely what we focus on. But lovely to meet you and looking forward to spending the next hour with you.
Terrific. And Mike, obviously, I think everyone's heard of the little company called BT, but maybe a bit about sort of your role and what's happening at BT.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Graham. Great to be here. Good afternoon and good morning for those over in the West. So my role is the state manager for Victoria and Tasmania here at BT. We've been in the business of helping financial advisors for the last 50 years across various owners, etc. But we're really pleased with our position in the market at the moment, whereby we are, a market leader in the managed account space, and we're really passionate about that. At BT, we think there's two types of advisors: those who are using managed accounts, and probably those that will use them at some point in the future. We're really passionate in the belief that managed accounts can help to, transform your business as an advice provider, and in turn, transform the client experience along the way. So again, looking forward to spending some time with you today.
Terrific. Now, as I said before, we really want to make today as interactive and valuable as possible. So if you've got any questions, please hit the Q&A and fire away, and we'll try and address those as we go through. And I'm sure it's the old adage that if you're thinking it, there's a lot of people are too. So share your thoughts, questions, observations as we go through. But maybe, Paul, I know we're sort of talking a lot today, people kind of active in this area already, but you've already thrown around a couple of acronyms, and I find that our industry is particularly good at the old TLAs, the 3-letter acronyms, and I think managed accounts is no different. But I think it is because there are some subtle differences between the types of managed accounts. We talk about managed accounts as quite an overarching term, but maybe just so everyone's got the right context of what we're talking about today, if you want to talk about some of the different types of managed accounts that are out in the marketplace. Yeah,
look, probably fair to say the three main ones that we come across, and I think advisors are probably used to, is the MDA, the IMA, and the SMA. So maybe if it's helpful, Graham, maybe I'll just sort of very quickly identify some of the sort of key differences between those. So an MDA is it's basically a service, right? So it's a service that's provided through a sort of contractual agreement with a MDA provider. And that MDA provider will do all of the transactions, et cetera, necessary on the client's account. When I mentioned there was a contract, so I think it's every 13 months or so, that contract gets renewed. And the advisor just needs to make sure that everything that is being offered through that MDA to that particular client is still relevant, and then make any sort of necessary changes. The IMA is a bit like the MDA in the fact that it is a service, so it's not a product either. The key thing with that, I guess, and it's in the name, individual managed account or individually managed account, it is very specific to the individual. Now, I don't want to get confusing, but whilst SMAs, for instance, which I'll cover in a sec, there is a lot of flexibility, and there is ways to tailor to a specific need of a client. The IMA really is set up specifically to make sure that whatever you're delivering to a client is very specific for that client. That could be around income, it could be around growth, it could be tax consequences or what have you. And then the final one, which is probably where Investsense operates our 99% of our business, is the SMA. The SMA, separately managed account, is a product. So it has a PDS, it's offered via a platform. It has professional investment managers and administrators that pretty much take care of everything. As I said before, there is some flexibility, and I'm sure we'll cover that. Certainly Mike will cover that off in a moment, but fundamentally they're the differences.
Yeah, great. And that's probably a good segue to you, Mike, because I think, you've talked before about there's a bit of a continuum of different ways of implementing these things, and it's not you can sort of move up and down this continuum either as a practice or even with individual clients. I think the platforms give a fair bit of ability to, tailor end results for clients. You want to talk through a little bit about how that works in practice and how you're seeing practices using that flexibility?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. Again, I'll help to set some context, but I think the continuum is the right way to look at it. And if you sort of start at one end, saying that this is your traditional advice approach, whereby you're setting bespoke portfolios, reviewing those, and executing changes under advice, right the way through to your fully automated managed accounts. And I'm happy to step through quickly just some of those steps along the way. So if you start at the individual, bespoke portfolios, and we say that's certainly not a managed account, but then you move on to perhaps a practice-based or an advisor-based portfolio. Again, that is not automated, and it'll be sort of rebalanced individually per client, but that's sort of maybe a stepping stone towards a managed account. Where the rubber hits the road on the managed accounts, certainly from our perspective, is either the MDA options, and there are a couple, or the SMA options. So an MDA, and Paul covered it well, is a service, and that can be, depending on the AFSL that you're operating under, could be your own MDA license, but not just operating it without advice. But what we like to see is actually partnering with a professional investment manager and operating that service almost reflecting what you would see out of an SMA. So it looks and feels like that product, but it's operated under a service arrangement under either your AFSL, or there are some providers in the marketplace who have an MDA license that they're happy to share with you and operate with your clients under their MDA license. And you work through then to the SMA option. So you've certainly got the opportunity as an AFSL to create your own SMAs if that's what you choose to do. Again, typically we see that being partnering with a professional investment manager like the team in Investsense, and working for them to own and be the investment manager for those SMAs. And then I suppose the last step in that continuum is your off-the-shelf SMA. So it's not tailored to your business necessarily, but it may align to your investment philosophy for potentially a large cohort or a small cohort of your clients. But as not to do Paul's job for him, but his the portfolios off the shelf on Panorama from Investsense, your CPI plus portfolios that are available, and often a great opportunity to use those without the added layer of having to be involved in the day-to-day operation of those portfolios. I think it's important to note that as an advice provider, as a practice or an advisor, you don't need to make the decision on a managed account to say this is the one for all of my clients. There is flexibility to say for a segment, for a cohort of our clients, we might use an off-the-shelf low-cost SMA. For our A and B, we might use an MDA portfolio. You can chop and change that as you see fit, and working with groups like BT and Investsense, we can help work with you to understand what that blend might look like according to your investment philosophy and the way your target clients are set up. So flexibility is really key in that sense.
And Mike, does the platform give an ability for an advisor to sort of tailor things? So if a client had, for example, a whole lot of BHP outside and they say, we don't want that in the portfolio, can you make those sort of changes? Yeah,
great question. So I suppose we jumped into that implementation phase, but yes. So if the Graham Burnard super account wants to be linked to the CPI +3 portfolio, and you've got some old shares from grandma, you can do what we call an intra-account transfer. So everything that you want to move into the portfolio can be done, but you can exclude assets and exclude things out of that rebalance. So the rest of the portfolio might go in, and there might be some buys and sells to align to the Investsense model, but effectively then you're invested in the model, excluding those ones that you've chosen to leave to the side.
Yeah, because it's funny. I always think for the advisor with their provider, it's almost a partnership, isn't it? Working with your SMA provider, you end up with this quite deep relationship and very high level of communication, probably different to a normal fund manager advisor relationship. It's quite deep. Paul, do you want to sort of talk about kind of how you interact with a lot of your clients and the sort of information you share and how you sort of touch base with them?
Yeah. Look, you're right. It is I believe it's a different relationship between a sort of a single asset manager or what have you that advisors may have. We use the word partnership with our clients, whether they're using a bespoke, something that we build, or whether they're using something off the shelf on Panorama, for example. The interaction that we do is pretty heavy. So we literally will sit with an advisor, we'll look at their book to the point that you and Mike just made around that sort of BHP holding. We've got tools that can actually assist the advisor if they've got portfolios already run. It's got certain assets being held in them, direct equities or whatever the case, that we can assist them and actually help them with the best way to integrate or in specie those direct equities into the actual SMA. On the communication side and what have you, I know we're going to touch a bit later in the webinar specifically on communication, But one of the key things that we want to do is make sure that the advisor remains front and center and kind of, along with the client, the investor, the most important person in the room. We really want to take a step back. Everything that we do, everything that we've got, all of our tools, all of our communication pieces, all go to the advisor for the advisor to share with their clients. We don't contact the client. We don't share anything with the investor. Everything goes via the advisor. So if we can make the advisor look smarter and better and sharper and more professional, and by providing what we believe is a great investment solution, then we've kind of done our job.
Yeah.
And I'll sort of show that in an actual a display of some of the stuff we provide later.
Terrific. Now, we've had managed accounts obviously being in action for a while now, and a few practices really embracing it. And I think, Mike, in particular, you've been able to work with practices and really see the practical benefits from a business perspective that they're getting. And I think you've done some research that's shown the kind of efficiency dividends they're getting from embracing managed accounts.
Yeah, no, we certainly have. And it is tricky to, draw a line to say this is the time you're going to save, because every practice currently does things a little bit differently than the other. You might have noticed in the synopsis for today's webinar that I think it mentioned that there was on average a saving of 13 hours per week in relation to portfolio management tasks that were happening within the business. That's across a large number of businesses. We recently did a case study though with a business, and I think this is interesting to think about it in a different context. And this business rolled out an MDA, partnered with a professional investment manager, and they're in a position now where they've got over 85% of their clients invested in that MDA on Panorama. Now, they have done some work themselves to do the numbers, and think there's been an efficiency gain of about 30% across their advisors and support staff. Now, interestingly, that hasn't been used as a cost saving, but rather it's been an increase in capacity for that business. And it's just changed some of the roles slightly in what those particularly support staff are now doing. And it's from a business owner's perspective, it's given them the ability to really change the way they're thinking about growth in the business. It means they can be aggressive in their organic growth and trying to get more referrals in from their existing referral partners. But equally, it's opened up the door for them to be confident to look for external acquisitions as well, and say that they know they've got some capacity in their business now. So it doesn't necessarily just come down to hours saved and then that's a finite thing. You can actually then layer that on top of what you can grow the business to be.
Yeah, what do you use those hours for?
And in line with that growth side, I think the other thing that
we're just breaking up a little bit there. How's that? We got you back, Michael.
Yeah, cool. We're back.
Yeah. No, you just broke up a little bit there. Just want to finish off.
I was just going to say the other piece of that puzzle around not just the efficiency gains, but the confidence that the advisors have got in the solution that they've rolled out. They've rolled it out really successfully with their existing clients, but it's given them a real, extra bit of confidence to be able to go, I'm going to land the next client because I'm really comfortable and confident in our investment philosophy and how we implement that. So that's helped with their conversion of prospects as well, which is an interesting outcome on top of the efficiency gains.
Yeah. And I think, Paul, that leads into the next point, which I think managed accounts are this rare instance where it's a real win-win. It's great for the advisor and the practice, but also really good client outcomes. And I think, again, you've seen a lot of practical feedback from advisors and real world portfolios where you can actually start to see the different sort of results clients are seeing. Do you want to share some of your observations there on sort of the real client benefits from those that are being moved into managed account solutions?
Yeah, sure. Look, there's loads of them, so I'll keep it short. I could probably talk for an hour just on what we hear from our clients about the benefits that they're having with their clients. So I think a couple of them. I think the first one probably is around the investments themselves. So because of the structure of we'll just say for the sake of this conversation, an SMA, because they're incredibly transparent. So for the advisors that are on the call that haven't used them, just to give an example, so basically every holding within the portfolio can be seen both by the advisor and also by the investor. So our portfolios, for instance, have a bunch of Australian shares. There's on average about probably 25 to 30 direct Aussie equities in the portfolio. There's ETFs in the portfolio. There's some managed funds in the portfolio, active and passive, bit of Vanguard and what have you. So the investor can actually see each one of the underlying holdings that they've got, each one of the shares that they've got. And what we find is the benefit to the investor is that they really feel a much bigger engagement with the investments that they've got. And from an advice perspective, having a conversation at a review time with the client about the SMA, about the performance, about the holdings and what have you, just gives a lot more to talk about. Now, they do kind of say, that there is an adage that says, the advisor should be focusing on strategy and not on investment returns and what have you. And I get that. I don't disagree with that, but I do think it's important to call out, if in the old days you're running through a balanced portfolio and the extent of the conversation is performance, and then you show them a statement with one line, number of units, unit price, and the value, as opposed to a managed account, an SMA, where you literally are looking at a bunch of different things, and the investment provider, in this case Investsense, is providing you with talking points on those underlying investments. It just makes for a really, really good conversation. The strategy stuff is important, obviously, but this is just an additive to that.
Yeah. So if you do have a client that wants to do a deep dive into the portfolio and rationale about the information's there if the advisor wants it and needs it. That's the,
yeah, 100%. Yep.
Yeah.
And I might just add, the client engagement piece I think is really important. Like some advisors, get concerned. They say, well, look, if I use a managed account, I use, Investsense, where's my value and all of those sort of things. And we could touch on that, go a bit deeper in that, in a moment. But if you think about the engagement that a stockbroker has with their clients, right? Stockbrokers are getting referrals all the time.
Yeah.
And it's because at the barbecue, the client is talking about the fact they own BHP or Rio or, whatever stock it might happen to be. And it sparks conversation, sparks engagement. I've got that, or I've got that too. My advisor did this, my advisor did that. And so it definitely sparks a lot more engagement. I actually think it's kind of undervalued how beneficial that can be.
Yeah. It's interesting. I think there's another benefit too. I had it reinforced with a client about this time last year when the markets were going through sort of one of their real bouts of volatility. And she'd been in the process of moving some clients into managed accounts, and she realized how much less stress she felt having reviews and meeting with those clients compared to the ones going, I probably stayed in growth assets too long. How am I going to explain that? And she said, I've just realized how much of my job I was just getting so stressed, particularly in those periods of market volatility. And I think during that long bull market, I think we'd forgotten that it can be quite stressful if you're the one making these decisions. So it's that whole partnering with a professional that does this 24/7, 360. And I can't do that as an advisor. We've got some great people and they're making these decisions. So again, it's not ceding responsibility, but it's sort of about that partnership, and you're sort of offloading that stress onto someone like yourself, Paul, instead of, but you're the one that loses the hair instead of the advisor.
Yeah, I've already lost it. That's fine. I can't lose anymore. So no, but you're 100% right.
Yeah.
Apparently the platform providers lose a little bit of hair as well.
Apparently.
So I guess, and we'll see if there's any other examples as we go through, but I think it's that sort of, like I said, it's that sort of win for the practice, win for the client, and win for the advisor, and having that ability to have that more, a better, deeper connection with the client than just trying to justify why investments decisions are made. So I guess that's why we're seeing such a big take up. So
can I just add one thing?
Yeah.
So Mike sort of mentioned that that business that sort of went through the process and, evaluated themselves, the, uplift and the 30% sort of better off and all of that kind of stuff. One question that I do get that's probably worth raising, and I get this from advisors, and I equally get it from probably some nervous staff, is that if I implement managed accounts into my business, I get all of these efficiencies. What does that mean for my staff? If you're a power planner, you're doing, you're used to doing 120, ROAs every time you make a change to an investment. All of a sudden, you don't have to do that. Does it mean people are going to lose their jobs? Does it mean all of that kind of stuff? And I just want to assure the advisors on the call. And look, at the end of the day, I suppose, if you're the principal advisor, you could make that call. Well, we don't need so many people. But the reality is that these businesses become, I'll be frank, they become better businesses.
Mm-hmm.
They start doing a lot more high value jobs, and the staff that they've got, the staff are still there, staff are still busy, but they're just doing higher value work.
And probably more
I think it's really
work.
important.
Yeah, more interesting than producing 120 ROAs. So guys, just to assume, someone's on the call now and they think this is sounding fantastic. So they reach out to you after this and said, yeah, look, I've made the decision. I want to embrace managed accounts. What do I do next? What are the sort of things you'd say to them as a sort of steps to work through to implement within your business?
Yeah.
Mike, want to go first?
Sure. And this is happening more and more. I'm talking to businesses that are using Panorama today who haven't looked at managed accounts, or businesses that are looking to move to Panorama. So we're doing a lot of this, and we'll typically get to understand what your broad investment philosophy is, and that will effectively narrow the potential partners from an investment management perspective. Paul can talk to the Investsense side, and from my understanding, that's quite broad. But what we'll then do, I suppose, is at that point we don't need to go, you need to fit into this box. So if we can understand broadly the investment philosophy of the group and the types of clients that they're looking after, and their current value proposition, that helps us put together probably a panel of investment managers to say, have a chat to these 3 or 4 different providers, and understand, at a high level what their offering is and how they might be able to work with you as a business, and having questions up your sleeve as an advisor around, what is the communication framework that you've got as an investment manager between the investment manager and the advice practice? Does that go direct to client? Does it come to me? How do you brand it? All those types of questions are really good ones to have. I think the way we normally do it is to have that engagement, and as a platform provider, we stay engaged through that interview stage, just to make sure that that it can be guided in the right direction. And once you get down to that 1 or 2 investment managers, then you can start to dive down into a bit deeper around which of those vehicles you choose to use. So whether it is an MDA that you think would work, or an SMA that you want to build as a practice, or whether there's a one off the shelf ready to go for you that you can use tomorrow. Paul, do you want to take it from there?
Yeah, look, probably. I think you covered it really well. I think probably the only things that that I can add is that it's really important to take the staff on the journey. If you're one, like we've got people on the call, if you're a principal of the business, so you've got staff, you decide that you want to start investigating managed accounts, then majority of the meetings that we have with the entire team, rather than just the principal, so we can sort of articulate the value, how it works, etc. And really everybody in that business, in that practice, comes on the journey, and it's incredibly important to sort of get their buy-in and answer any questions, and settle everyone down. People aren't going to lose jobs, etc. Like I mentioned before.
Yeah.
In relation to the investment philosophy piece, it is like really important. Thankfully, Investsense, we've definitely got a value bias, but we're not a deep value like a dimensional style. So we find that majority of advisors that have got an investment philosophy is pretty well aligned to the way we think about the world. But it is important, and Mike, you're 100% right. I'd much rather see if someone was a deep value or they were very much a growthy style advisor, sort of growth at all costs sort of thing. Then I would be the first to say, look, we may not be suitable for you, and go and have a chat to XYZ. Very, very important to be clear about the investment philosophy and what you want to do.
Yeah, I think the other thing I see is, some of the practical things like being really clear on the advice requirements of your licensee. Some will require just an ROA if you're switching within a platform. Others will need an SOA. But I think have that chat. If you're self-licensed, obviously with your compliance person, if you're licensed through a group, understand what the requirements are and get familiar with the SOA documents. So I think the big thing is I find, because they're right, we'll switch all the clients in, or as many as we can justify from a bid. They realize it's a massive project, and they kind of realize that they can't do 50 SOAs in the next 2 months to move the clients in. So I think it's really doing a project management piece, which I guess, Mike, is kind of where you guys work a lot with it to understand practically how you're going to go about implementing this in your business.
Yeah, absolutely. And the advice component is really key. The other stream that we often see within the business, though, probably in the earlier stage, is just, we've touched on it, but that client engagement piece and what the plan is to roll this out to clients, and starting with the right clients to do that. It might not be your trickiest client that you start with. It might be your easiest client with your best relationship. It might be a friend of yours that you can test this out on, and that piece is actually interesting in itself. And in a larger business, making sure that there's some shared findings around, geez, I positioned it in this way in a meeting and it didn't go so well, so let's maybe think about how we frame it up again. That's an evolving piece, and it's something that probably we can encourage that engagement, that collaboration within the team. But it's something that we've seen work really well for that. Actually, the business that I mentioned before in that example, they did that really well. So they had 3 or 4 advisors, and they all individually had some struggles in the early days, but by working together, they were able to sort of make sure that message flowed really well. And as I said, now they're full of confidence in how they roll it out. Back to sort of that implementation side of things, the advice piece is really important, obviously, and making sure that that's structured in the right way. And then from a execution point of view, that's one of the, I suppose, to blow the BT trumpet, is one of our real advantages in that sense. So, oftentimes the portfolios don't vary wildly from what the existing portfolio is today into what the SMA or the MDA might look like in the future state, if you will. So as I mentioned before, we've got a tool called the intra-account transfer tool, which is just a fancy way of saying we're going to do all the buys and sells for you. You don't need to go away and do any of that calculation work to go, all right, the portfolio looks like this today. We've got to set up our special spreadsheet to work out how we get it to look like the final portfolio. We'll do that hard work for you with the ability to make those exclusions that you mentioned before, to keep Grandpa's BHP shares separate from the portfolio, or there might be some exclusions in the portfolio for directors of companies or something like that you need to exclude from the portfolio. So you can actually go to that level and actually do some substituting within the portfolio for specific clients. So it's not just what you want to keep out or keep separate to the managed account. It's, if there's something specifically in there that the client doesn't want to be invested in, well, you can substitute that out as well, which is pretty cool. And when there's the added layer of moving from off platform or from a different platform. Part of our service offering is that we've got a transitions team that can help to do a lot of the heavy lifting and the preparatory work for clients moving on to the platform, which can again save a whole lot of money in your back office time.
And I think, Paul, one of those key things is doing a bit of that practical portfolio comparison sort of work to see, from a, I guess, justification, big perspective, how clients going to be affected and the like. And I think you've got some tools that you work with advisors to help in that regard.
We have. We've got a lot of tools that have been built specifically to, I guess, help advisors kind of come to the conclusion of whether or not to use managed accounts, and then a bit like Mike around that sort of transitioning as well. One of the services that we do offer, which is really popular, the analysts do a lot of it within our business, and that's looking at sort of taking an existing portfolio, doing some analysis on that portfolio, and then reporting back to the advisor. And I kind of, before I have any meeting, I ask the advisor, would you mind sending me your portfolio? And 99% of them have no issue with it. They send it to me. I get the analyst to do a bunch of work and then deliver something. Now, the beauty of that, I think, from an advisor perspective, is that they're getting something for nothing, right? Because there's no obligation with this. But what we aim to do is uncover basically everything about the portfolio that's currently being used by the advisor. And 9 times out of 10, we identify stuff that the advisor has no idea about. And that's not because the advisor's not good at what they do. It's purely because when you really dig down, you got tools like we've got, Bloomberg, etc. You can just really go to the nth degree of these underlying holdings within an advisor's portfolio. So it uncovers the good, bad, and the ugly. It opens up for a conversation that then leads to, okay, we need to do something, or maybe they don't need to do something. But it's really enlightening. I think that it's incredibly valuable. It's probably one of the great things I think that we do deliver, obligation free to our clients or to prospects.
Mm-hmm. So in a practical sense, after you've got you've worked through your project plan. Is the next thing that whole positioning piece? Because one of the big things I find is the impact this has, or how it throws open the advisor's value proposition and how comfortable they are talking with the client about what they do. And it's interesting, I was with a client the other day. The business had made the decision to embrace managed accounts. There are a number of salaried advisors, and a few of them had been poor at implementing, if you like. And when I spoke to them, when we really got down to it, they were going, for my higher value clients, how do I justify what I do? And they're almost using that I'm busy doing stuff for them and doing ROAs, and that's what I'm paying a fee for. So there's a little bit about advisors letting go and kind of realizing where they really do add value and where they don't. Do you sort of get involved in those conversations, and how do you kind of help advisors, I guess, crystallize where it is they actually add value and what their value proposition is?
Do you want me to go first, Mike?
Yeah.
So look from our perspective, I think if you look at the whole value of advice work that's been done by a lot of people, there's a lot of work that advisors are doing, whether it's meeting, dare I say it, sorry, but whether it's meeting with BDMs, whether it's doing manager research, whether it's writing ROAs and all of that kind of stuff. There's a lot of stuff that advisors currently do that the client doesn't value, right? So I think it's kind of changing the narrative for the advisor and the advice firm, the practice. Now we've got some clients that have been literally running their own portfolios for 15 years. If I'd have tried to talk to them 4 years ago about, moving from what they've been doing to working with an investment firm like us, where and this firm actually uses the Investsense portfolios, funnily enough, on Panorama. They're a big business, probably $300 million in AUM. And if I'd have tried to talk to them about moving 3 years ago, they'd have gone, we're not interested. Like, what we do is great. It's our value proposition and everything's going swimmingly. Then comes COVID, then comes inflation, then comes high interest rates for the first time in 30 years, etc. And the world has changed. And technology's changed. And I think the why it's relatively easy to enhance, I believe, a value proposition from an advice firm to an investor to a client is because of the changes that are taking place, both at a technology level and at an investment level. The days of, I think, and I'll be crude, but the days of, just sort of pinning your ears back, investing in a bunch of ETFs or indexes and getting a great return for your clients over the last decade are over. Mm-hmm. That's the simple fact. There's a lot of smarter people than me saying that. And we've got Vanguard, we use Vanguard and all. That's not a slur on passive. It's just saying things have got more complicated and you do need to be really clear and careful with portfolio construction now, whereas it has been easier in the past. And then the technology piece, businesses like Panorama, this technology didn't exist when a lot of practices started. So there wasn't a choice, but now there is, and articulating that to an end investor of all the benefits associated is actually a really good news story and relatively easy.
Yeah. I think the positioning, when I say done well, it's really talking to clients about this being an evolution. So it's not like I've changed my mind about how we manage money. There's new technology, so there's new capabilities. We've now embraced that as the next evolution of how we're helping our clients invest their money.
The other thing I think we hear is that where there's consistent communication from an advice business, so inevitably in a portfolio there's going to be some ongoing movement in those investments, and if the advice business can use technology, like you said, Paul, to get out confirmation of what's happened in the portfolios regularly, those little touch points, although some clients may not value every single one of them, clients are getting something from their advisor regularly about what's happening in their portfolio. So either consciously or unconsciously, clients are getting the sense that there is stuff happening behind the scenes and that their advisors are monitoring it. And for the most part, that communication is coming from the advice practice. It's not coming from Investsense or the other investment manager. It's coming from Michael Klupacs financial planning, if you like, and that in itself helps to build that story around, hey, we never used to get all this communication about what's happening in the portfolio. We used to hear about it at review time, and that might be it. So that change in itself can help build some value.
Yeah, and importantly, it's not something the advisor or someone in the practice has to write or put together on a monthly basis or market commentary, etc. Again, it's this partnership. We're getting access to this tremendous resource of investment managers.
Yeah.
I know there's probably a few myths or things we all hear from advisors that maybe make them reluctant for some or all of their clients. One of the biggies is that makes it going to be more expensive. There's another layer of costs and the MER, and I might not be able to get bid for moving the clients. Because Paul, you spend a lot of that time doing comparisons and things. What are you seeing in practice around that sort of bid cost sort of argument around moving?
Yeah, look, I think it is a myth. I've no doubt there's some expensive managed accounts out there. But I think when you compare it with, let's say, a model portfolio or what have you, a multi-manager style product, then in our experience, from a bid point of view, from a cost point of view, then in a lot of cases, in most cases, it's actually cheaper. Or I should say, cheaper, lower cost, high value, low cost. So my experience would suggest that you normally would be looking about 85 basis points for, let's say, a balanced fund multi-manager style thing. The Investsense portfolios on Panorama, for example, for a balanced fund is 65 basis points. So it's lower cost. Part of that is because there's direct equities, and we don't charge an ICR on the direct equity part of the portfolio. So there's a cost saving there. And probably the other part to mention is that because of the size of our business, we're able to negotiate what are called rebates with some of the underlying fund managers. I won't mention names, but hypothetically, if you got fund manager Y and they've got an ICR of 90 basis points for some international equity fund, then because of our scale, we might be able to buy that for 75 basis points.
Yeah.
And that discount or that rebate flows through directly to the investor, to the advisor's client via the platform. We don't touch it, but it's a saving.
Yeah. So just be clear, all those rebates, any benefit is purely for the end client that they're getting that. Yeah.
Yep. In our case anyway. Yep.
Another thing that we hear a bit is, that my practice might be a bit small to justify moving to managed accounts. Again, is there a too small, or is there a size you need to be for this to be an option? So if we were to be building a bespoke managed account for someone and putting that on, let's say, Panorama, then both Panorama and Investsense really have got a minimum amount of assets that would need to go into the SMA to make it commercial, and that's just the reality of it. Those sort of numbers are around 100 to 150 mil would need to go into that managed account, into that SMA, probably within about sort of 18 months or 2 years. That's the kind of number. So if you were to look to get 150 mil in, and let's assume that you get 70% of your clients, you're going to have to be a business of around probably $250 million by way of size. At an individual level, if an advisor wanted to use just an SMA off the shelf, then it does depend on the platform. But in most cases, you could put a client with $50,000 into one of our multi-asset SMAs. We've got some advisors that have got books as little as $20 million in FUM, and they're utilising them. So depending what it is you want to be using, but in general terms, very few people would be too small to utilise an SMA. Yeah. Another myth or thing we hear back sometimes is that I'm worried that it's going to lead to a one size fits all approach, and that's not what my business is about. And I want that flexibility. Again, do you hear that a bit, and how do you counter that argument when you hear it? Mike, is that something you come across a little bit?
Yeah, a little bit, and I think I talked about before that there's those different options within the managed account suite, and I think, Paul, we were chatting yesterday, and as much as I'd like to say everything can be on Panorama, there might be reasons why you do have a dual platform strategy for some clients who fit better on across two different platforms. But I think in this day and age where advisors are competing against industry funds, inevitably you're going to have those types of clients who are looking for a really low cost option. And there's something that we were chatting about yesterday, Paul, that you put together a portfolio that is a real competitor against industry funds, but that portfolio likely isn't probably suitable to a sophisticated investor, so therefore you're going to need an alternate approach for that type of client. So typically what we're seeing is that across different segments of a client base, there are different requirements, and that in itself means that it's not a cookie cutter approach, and you might be using the same investment manager, but you can create the portfolios that are right for that type of client.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if I can just add, I think it's a really good point. And I encourage people to not put everything with Investsense. And whilst I'd like everyone to put everything with Investsense, the reality is that we're going to be suitable for probably 70-80% of clients. There's going to be some that we're not, and I think advisors need to have a couple of different options available to them and utilize the best opportunity for each individual client.
And I guess ESG investment options is a good example where it's it's going to be relevant to some clients, not relevant to others, but you should be having that conversation. And then what's your solution for that if you do want to go down that path with a client? I know we touched on this, but I think it's worth going again because it is something I do hear quite regularly, this concern that I'm going to lose my high value clients, or I'm worried about them not seeing the value in my fee because part of what I'm doing is managing the money for them. And, that I don't want those clients to become vulnerable because I've outsourced that. Paul, you must hear that a little bit. What's your counter to that? And what's been your experience more importantly?
Yeah, the experience is definitely completely different to the, well, it's not a myth, it's how people feel, or it's how they think it might play out.
Yeah.
But it very rarely plays out like that. And Mike's mentioned that, there's a lot more touch points with a managed account. If anything, the perception is the advisor is doing a lot more. And can I share my screen quickly?
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
And I won't, I just want to give people just a bit of a sense. This is a password protected portal. Can you see that okay? It's a website.
Yep.
Right. So this just gives you an idea. So there's portfolio updates, performance reports, why something's in the portfolio, what are the portfolio holdings. There's SOA inserts that have been written that advisors can use, and the portfolio suite and fees. This section here is, these portfolios have only been going for a couple of years. They were launched, unfortunately, just before COVID. But nevertheless, this shows you each time there's a change to a portfolio, we provide an update for the advisor. So I'll give you an idea. So this was increasing duration within fixed interest. So we know that I won't get technical, but the bottom line is there was a need to have very, very low duration, and we had incredibly low duration in the portfolios, which was great for the portfolios when interest rates are rising. And what we did was in May was that we increased duration. Interest rates have started to go up. We're now being rewarded, getting a higher yield, etc. So there is a PDF. I'm not going to open it because I think with Zoom, I'll have to go in and out of different screens. But the bottom line is there's a PDF, and it explains why the change has been made, what the change is, etc. The advisor can send that to their client, and it's a touch point. There's no ROA, there's no SOA, but it's basically demonstrating that the client is the advisor is completely across everything that's going on in the portfolio. Could be an entitlement offer, a capital raise on a stock. We write it and then we deliver that to the client. There's performance reports that get given. Won't open those because they're performance reports like everything else. Why something's in the portfolio? If someone had a question, if a client had a question of the advisor, he said, "Oh, who's Blackmores?" And these are the direct stocks. Who's Blackmores? I've never heard of them. You can come to this site. You can click on Blackmores, and on the right-hand side, you'll get a bunch of sort of quantitative stuff, price to book, earnings per share, all of that kind of stuff. And then on the left, you'll get about the stock. So who are they? Why the stock is in the portfolio and what could go wrong with the stock. And you literally could snip that and just send it to the investor. So that's another touch point. And the same here with the funds. So this is Royal London. This is a particular manager. One of my colleagues, Jonathan, is interviewing the portfolio manager of this particular fund, talks about the fund, the objective, et cetera, et cetera. So there's all of this information that the advisor can pass on to the client as and when is required. And then there's obviously other pieces, but these are incredibly important touch points that are there specifically for the advisor to give the client, to make the advisor look good, to be honest. and to inform and keep the client informed.
Yeah, again, it's this concept of partnership, isn't it? You're partnering with someone that gives you great access to this, and like I said, they're involved 24/7 with managing the money. How can you do that as an advisor on your own? You just can't do it. But it's that getting them comfortable to articulate that with clients. So, I've sort of worked with role players with the advisors, getting them to feel comfortable in having that conversation. But I think to your point, 99 times out of 100, when they have it, it actually goes down well. In fact, one of the big problems I've got with one client is they started at review time saying, look, we're going to be doing this over the next year or so. So next time we catch up, we'll be talking about moving you. Said every client wanted to do it right now. And we couldn't produce the SOAs quick enough. So the clients really wanted it and embraced it. And it didn't diminish his value with the client. It just enhanced it and made the clients stickier. So yeah, again, I think it comes back to this win-win, doesn't it?
We've seen some examples where the intent at the start of the process, if you like, was to go to the middle, 60% of their clients to use it, but we'll keep the 20% over here and we'll do some of our own direct equities, etc. Once they've rolled it out to the midsection, they go, actually, you know what? We're going to take this to the top end as well because they're going to get a better outcome. So it's interesting how we can see it play out like that at times.
Yeah. Just as we sort of coming to the home stretch, maybe sort of as a wrap up sort of question for each of you, maybe something with you, Paul, for people that are starting to use managed accounts in their business, what's something they should really do to make sure they get the most value for them and their clients? What should they be doing so they get the real benefit of the managed account, experience for the business and the clients?
Yeah. I'll look at, utilising, work with Investsense and Panorama for a start. No, I'm joking. I'm kind of not. But in all seriousness, I think the important thing is it is that communication. It's making sure they've got a clear narrative with their investors, with their clients. I think that is incredibly important. The other thing that a lot of our clients do when they start to use managed accounts and work with us is we do a lot of client events. So, we're happy to stand up in front of, do it 20 or 30 clients at a time, do a macroeconomic update. It's where the advisor's introducing, us as a business partner to their firm. And we've mentioned partnership about 40 times. That is how we refer to ourselves with our clients. We are partnering with the advisor. We're happy to do all those sort of things. I think those things are important to bring the clients on the journey.
And Mike, from your platform perspective, what are kind of the main tips for practices and planners to get the most out of managed accounts?
I think at the start of the journey, it's to be open-minded to it. This doesn't have to be a one size fits all, and you don't have to jump in 100% into one idea. There are ways that you can have a crack at this in a small sense, and off-the-shelf SMA with some of your smaller clients as a starting point before you need to fully embrace and jump in across your entire client base. And again, it's just that engagement around working and aligning with that right investment consultant or investment manager, I should say, to making sure that the investment philosophies are absolutely lined up. Because what that then does is when the communication comes from Investsense, it's aligned with what the financial planning practice is thinking anyway. So it's not a big jump for the advisor to be passing on that information to their client. It's aligned with what they've been hearing for the last 10 years, albeit they've been creating their own portfolios. So I think there are a couple of things that, don't be scared about it, but do take the time to understand and make sure you're aligning with the right partners.
Yeah, certainly one of the things I see is when you're spending some time with someone to help articulate that investment philosophy, something that people kind of know it, but they don't generally have it written down and documented and be really clear. And it's particularly if there's multiple advisors and business partners, really as a business, what do you believe? What are those core essences about what's important about managing money?
Yeah.
And then then, as you said, guides to who to partner with that can best align with that and help fulfill that. So you're not changing how you manage money, it's better executing what it is you believe.
Yeah, exactly right.
I think you've touched on before, Paul, no matter what, whether it's active, passive, growth, value, there's ways of implementing it through managing it. There's someone out there that will do what you believe. It's just being really clear what that is firstly, and often getting someone, like you two to or myself to help articulate that is a great place to start. And then from my point of view, getting really clear on your value proposition. So you're actually seeing this as a positive in the client relationship, not something you're making an excuse for. This is enhancing, it's a way of enhancing your relationship. And I do believe it's a win-win. This is a way of you're doing the client a favor and giving them a better outcome. And it's also delivering business efficiency so you can look after more clients more efficiently. So it's being really clear on those things in your mind, having that belief in it, then it's very easy to have the conversation with clients.
Yeah, 100%.
And I think on that note, it looks like we're out of time. So thanks, guys, for sharing some really at the coalface insights that you both have, and you're both dealing with practices all day, every day that are embracing this and on the journey. And it is a journey. The industry's still evolving and doing things differently and better. So being able to share those with us was really terrific, and really appreciate your time.
No worries. Thank you.
And thanks everybody for joining us. And we will look forward to seeing you at the next Evolve Live session in a month's time.